One of the most common questions I get is what actually happens on closing day. Now, as someone who closes deals every day, I'm going to walk you through exactly what that looks like as a buyer. The chain of events from morning of closing to the moment you get your keys. And I'm going to give you a few tips along the way so your closing day goes as smoothly as possible. My name is Soccio-Marandola. I'm a lawyer here in Toronto, and I help people like you close real estate deals every single day. Now, if you enjoy this type of content, make sure you subscribe and join our community. And if you have a closing coming up, we've built the most transparent legal fee calculator online. It gives you a full breakdown of every dollar you'll spend and even calculates closing costs like land transfer tax and title insurance. That's linked in the description down below. Now in Ontario, by the time your actual closing day arrives, most of the heavy lifting has already been done. In the time leading up to closing, we've already reviewed title, ordered and received title insurance, prepared all of the necessary closing documents, met with you to sign those documents, and collected your down payment or final purchase funds. Generally, there's no paperwork for you on closing day itself. You're not going to go into an office or jump into a meeting online. For the most part, you're waiting. It really helps to understand exactly what's happening behind the scenes to make that waiting a lot less stressful. So here's exactly what happens from a lawyer's perspective on your closing day. First, we assemble all of the purchase funds. That means receiving your mortgage funds and combining them with the balance that you already brought in ahead of time. So your lender will wire the mortgage proceeds directly into our trust account, usually on the morning of closing. Sometimes it does happen the day before, and until that money lands, nothing else can really move. But once that money is together in full, it's used to pay the seller, to pay land transfer tax, pay the title insurance premium, and to pay our legal fees. Now, at some point, again, usually in the morning, the lawyers are also exchanging signed documents. So when we're on the buying end, we're sending over a direction for title and an undertaking to readjust the statement of adjustments if necessary. The seller's lawyer is going to send over a vendor's closing certificate. This is essentially a promise of everything in the agreement of purchase and sale that they're representing or providing, a declaration that the seller is not a non-resident, and an undertaking from the seller's lawyer that they will discharge any mortgage on title for the seller. This is necessary because as the buyer, we need to acquire clean title, since in most cases we're going to be registering a new mortgage on title for the buyer. So at this point, we've received the mortgage funds and have exchanged the documents with the seller's lawyer. We now move on to wiring the balance of the purchase price to the seller's lawyer. This is the most important part of closing. The seller needs their money before we're closed. Now, once the lawyer actually receives the funds in their trust account, things start to finalize. The seller's lawyer will release the deed, which means as the buyer's lawyer, we can go in and register the new transfer. This is the document that gives you legal title as the new buyer. Now in Ontario, this is all done using a system called TeraView. It's all digital, no paper deeds, no one actually shows up at a registry office nowadays. If there's a new mortgage, we register it on title right after the transfer. The last step is the keys. Now, before, keys used to be physically exchanged. The sellers would courier the keys to the buyer's lawyer's office, and once we were officially closed, the buyer would come in and pick them up. Now, almost all of our deals close by exchanging a lockbox code. The seller's realtor will typically leave a lockbox on the property. That code is then provided to us by the seller's lawyer, and once all of the previous steps are complete, we release that code directly to our clients, who would be the buyers. That means you no longer have to make a detour to your lawyer's office on the day of closing. Once you get confirmation, you head straight to your new property, get the keys out of the lockbox, and take possession of your new home. Now, and I want to be direct about this because it's the thing that causes the most stress on closing day. You're probably not getting your keys in the morning, and that's just how closings work. In Ontario, we don't have set closing times. The standard agreement of purchase and sale gives the parties until 6 o'clock to complete the transaction. Now in practice, it works more like 5 p.m. because that's when the land registry and most banks close. But there's no fixed hour in the day. Closings happen when everything required is actually complete, and that looks different on every deal. So there's various things that stop deals from closing first thing in the morning. Sometimes the delay is on the mortgage side. Lenders don't always advance funds first thing in the morning. If the funds arrived at 2 in the afternoon, everything starts from there. Sometimes we're waiting on the seller's lawyer. They may be managing multiple closings that day, and because we're exchanging documents, confirming receipt of funds, waiting on the release of the transfer, and all of that depends on another party responding. So that's not something that we can fully control, and it does affect timing. Sometimes it's as straightforward as the seller hasn't vacated the property yet. And because vacant possession is a requirement in most deals, the seller's lawyer may be holding off until that's confirmed, and that alone can push things to the afternoon. And then there's a situation where the buyer is also selling on the same day. This is probably the most common reason that closings run late. If you need the proceeds from your sale to fund your purchase can't start until your sale is, well, fully closed. And if the buyer that's funding that sale is in the same situation, waiting on their own sale to close, it's creating this domino effect. Each deal waits on the one before it, and things can get very tight to that 6 o'clock deadline. That's why it's recommended not to sell and buy in the same day, because any type of delay causes that chain of events that could lead to missing the closing deadline. Now, occasionally a closing will run up right against that deadline, and when that happens, there are a few ways for lawyers to handle it so you still get possession that day, even if the formal registration happens the following morning. It's not that common, but it's manageable, and your lawyer will walk you through that if it comes up. The main thing I want you to take away from this: don't schedule your movers or any trades, etc., for early in the day, because there's no guarantee on the timing of your closing. Now, in my experience, most deals close between 2 and 5 p.m. All right, so that's closing day, the chain of events behind the scenes while you're waiting for the call. When you understand the sequence, the waiting makes sense. And when the waiting makes sense, closing day feels a lot less stressful. If your closing does get delayed, and sometimes it does, that's a whole separate conversation, and we'll cover that in another video. If you're enjoying these behind the scenes real estate law videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I post a new video every week. And if you're a realtor, I also send a weekly update about different legal situations that come up in our closing. That's our realtor newsletter, and you can subscribe to it with the link down in the description. Thanks for watching.